All right, F tier. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this F tier has a lot of like young guys. That's kind of, they could, all these teams outplay this, but I'm putting them here for right now just because on paper, it's tough to really love what I'm seeing for any of these receiving cores. I'm going to read these. You give me your take, and then maybe I'll give some explanation or some context where it's necessary. So I have the New England Patriots first. Obviously, I've lamented last year it was even worse than this. But the moves they made this offseason, Stephon Diggs, obviously drafting Kyle Williams, who I like. They have more talent this year, but we still have no real known talent. Your best known talent's coming off an ACL and, allegedly doing cocaine on a boat in Miami just this past week, which is not to say that there's not productive wide receivers around the NFL doing such, but there's concerns out of New England with his offseason behavior already so far. You got Pop Douglas, Mac Hollins, Kayshon Boutte there, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker. They really have the kitchen sink here at the receiver position. They have names. They have guys they've added to this roster. It's just, I'm not sure any of them are great. Tennessee Titans with Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, Van Jefferson, Alec Eomanor, Kamari Dike, who they just drafted, Traylon Burks, who was your former first rounder, Xavier Restrepo, who's your UDFA, who played with Cam Ward, and then Chigakonkwo. Panthers with Tedero McMillan, Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen, Jalen Coker, Hunter Renfrow, who's back from not a retirement himself, but not playing this past year. Tommy Tremble, Jatavion Sanders at the tight end position. And then I also threw in the New York Jets with, probably the best receiver of any team on this list with Garrett Wilson. But then after that, the worst of any team, in my opinion, Allen Lazard, Malachi Corley, Arian Smith, Mason Taylor, relying on some rookies and second-year guys to take big steps there. Those are your 4 F-tier teams.
Yeah, I'll start with the Patriots and Stephon Diggs. I mean, my, oh my, when he is right, he is dynamic. He is a playmaker. He's somebody that strikes fear into the secondary of football teams. But you don't know which version of him you're going to get. I would think that with a guy like Mike Vrabel, a veteran player like Stephon Diggs would be able to have some sort of mutual respect and understanding that, I've had a lot of these player-type coaches where they say you're going to be yourself, when you're out of the building. We want you to be you. But when it's time to work, it's time to work. I wonder how far on the work side of that pendulum things swing for Stephon Diggs this season. Now, the Patriots are a team that's gotten better as a roster, but they're still, like you said, it's like receiver by committee and no real stars in this room. I do like the addition of a guy like Mac Hollins. And if you go watch Mac Hollins in Buffalo, he made some big plays for that football team. He's a gritty guy, do it all, a real New England Patriot type, but limited. As for the Titans, we've got a lot to see with Cam Ward and how he is able to utilize his targets. But the fact that Calvin Ridley is the first guy on the list for this group, no offense to Calvin Ridley, it speaks to the state of affairs in Tennessee. For the Panthers, obviously we have a lot of chips on the table for Tetaroa McMillan to have a great year. Xavier Legette was quietly pretty darn good for Carolina, and we know Thielen is a salty vet. The guy that I really like in this list is Coker. A lot of ability for the youngster, and I think he's somebody that's going to continue to flash for this Carolina Panthers team. And for the Jets, it's funny, Garrett Wilson, great receiver, Allen Lazard, some drop issues, but a guy that is a big target, somebody that I think Justin Fields can lean on. But to your point, they're going to run the football a lot. So, I mean, I think I wrote on my Jets notes here, look, I wrote on my Jets
one
notes
wide
here.
receiver sets. Can we do one wide receiver?
They're going to run the rock. Get out of here. That's what I wrote for the Jets. So I hope that they run the rock. It's an O-lineman's dream to play in that offense. You're not going to give up a lot of sacks. Let's just hope that Justin Fields and this receiving core can figure something out. And Allen Lazard is not going to drop the ball.
Yeah, I think Jeremy Ruckert, who's your tight end 2 in New York, is going to be a more, I don't want to say featured piece, but a more critical piece than your wide receiver 2 in New York. Just given, I think, how this offense is going to be set up. It is not going to, if I had to guess, I think this is going to be the most run heavy offense in the NFL this season. That's where your talent lies. That just everything is set up for this team to run the football. And when they are taking shots, it's going to be, Arian Smith is going to be more valuable than than Allen Lazard, because he is going to be your take the top off the defense guy, the run, deep shot sort of thing. That's what this offense is going to look like. So I don't foresee that team leaving the F tier anytime soon. If you had to pick one of these four, though, that by the end of the season we're saying may not be F tier anymore, which one would you say?
It would be the Panthers for me.
That's where I was at with them too.
I mean, the steps in the right direction for Bryce Young. Confidence goes a country mile in the National Football League. If you can find a way to gain confidence in a league where you just get the shit kicked out of you every week, you're in a good spot. Bryce Young has the confidence. He's got T-Mac now. Leggett, we talked about. Thielen is the vet. Coker is like, get him the rock as often as you can. They don't have a terrible unit. It's F tier because there's some unknowns there. What is the second year for Xavier Leggett going to look like? Does Coker make the big jump and become a volume guy? And does Bryce Young continue to build on what he started last year foundationally, or is he kind of level out as that guy who's pretty good? You can win with him, not because of him.
I think by the end of this rookie contract for all these guys, so obviously Coker, Leggett, that's 2 years from now. So 2027 season, that'd be T-Mac year 3. I think we could be talking about this as a B to A tier receiving core. It could be a very good receiving core in time. Obviously, I'm just hedging right now because they're all so young. And at this point in time, we just don't quite know. All right, D tier. 5 teams. And some pretty darn good teams in this.
Yes.
But I have the Bills kicking it off. Obviously, the Bills, another team that has kind of the kitchen sink approach at their receiving core. Like their 5th best receiver isn't a bad receiver, but their best receiver is not a good receiver either. There's not a great receiver either. They just have a lot of kind of guys in this core. Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, and then Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid at tight end. I'll get to Dalton Kincaid a little bit later when we talk about him, but that's their receiving core. Broncos, Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Devon Villay, Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant, who they just drafted in the 3rd round, Evan Ingram. Los Angeles Chargers in this tier as well. Ladd McConkey, and then, Quinn Johnson, huge. Mike Williams, Trey Harris, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Will Disley, and Tyler Conklin at tight end. Pittsburgh Steelers, you have DK Metcalf there now leading it, but after that, Robert Woods, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, and then Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith at tight end. And the Seattle Seahawks with Jackson Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp, MVS, and then Noah Fant at the tight end position. Torrey Horton, Jake Bobo at receiver.
Don't forget Jake Bobo now.
Sorry, didn't want to hit it. All right, there's your 5 thoughts.
Look, I mean, like you said, there's really good teams on this list, and there's obviously 4 of these teams, 3 of these teams that have pretty darn good quarterbacks with Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers, and Josh Allen. I'll start with the Broncos, though. This is just not a team that's built to go out there and air raid you to death. They're not going to throw the football all around the yard. They're looking to beat you on the ground. They're built that way. The offensive line, the way they've drafted, their quarterback takes care of the football, his ability to run. But I think that will make things dangerous for defenses on the outside because, as we've seen over the course of the last few years, Cortland Sutton is a guy that can be relied upon. He's one of those under-the-radar studs at the receiver position. I also love the addition of Evan Ingram. And when he gets an opportunity with some of this run action to go get open downfield when the eyes are in the backfield, Evan Ingram can be explosive. We've seen him have dynamic years at the tight end position. So I'm excited to see how he's involved in that offense. For the Chargers, Ladd McConkey was a stud last year. Is he going to take the next step and become one of these guys that is just week in, week out, putting up ridiculous fantasy numbers? QJ, are we going to get anything out of this guy this year? Because he is open a lot. And, Justin Herbert's a good man because he's thrown him the football. He's thrown him the football a lot and given him many chances. At what point do those chances diminish? Mike Williams, you know the deal with Mike Williams. Can he continue to be himself? Is he going to have any fall off? Disley, Conklin, that's a good room. Not a great room. That's a good room. Disley has been a guy that Justin Herbert has relied upon. But again, this is a team that wants to run the football. They've got an offensive line that can protect the edges very well, but they do have the ability to run the football at will. And for the Steelers, DK Metcalf is your number 1, but we've seen at times, sometimes his mental gets in the way of the physical, which is unfortunate because he's so talented physically. Robert Woods and Austin, those 2 guys are veterans. They're probably more often than not going to be in the right place at the right time for Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Aaron requires much more than that outside of having a number one in DK Metcalf. Freiermuth, he's become a stalwart and a staple in Pittsburgh. And then for the Seahawks, we've talked about it. They don't have anybody that's really going to be taking the top off the defense. They've got a number of guys who can get open. They can win quick routes. I like JSN. He's a guy that can do a bit of everything. But none of these guys scream, the ceiling is coming off the house if I'm a defense. I'm going to keep this thing in front of us, force Sam Darnold to be tremendous with the football, anticipatory throws, things of that nature. There's a reason this is the D tier category.
Yeah.
I didn't talk about the Bills. Khalil Shakir is unbelievable. Get that guy the ball 20 times a game. Keon Coleman, he's bigger than you think. He's a horse. I think that they need to continue to find creative ways to allow him to catch the ball and then run with it. Guys bounce off Keon Coleman pretty well. And then Knox and Kincaid. I want to hear your thoughts on Kincaid because obviously we've got such lofty high hopes for Dalton Kincaid. He's so talented, but physically and then obviously the way they ended the season last year in Buffalo had to be tough on Dalton.
Yeah, so last year he played through a knee injury the vast majority of the season. And if you watched him as a rookie to year two, you were disappointed, right? You were like, what is this? He had over 700 yards as a rookie, almost 700 yards as a rookie, 673, and then only 448 last year, and just was like not the same athlete. But the injury hampered him. Like it was obvious. If you watched him coming out of Utah, you thought this guy was going to be, like a tier one tight end in the NFL. So if he joins that, if he does live up to that promise that we saw as a rookie, didn't see last year, but saw coming out of Utah, there's a good shot this receiving core is a lot better. It just lacks your outside route winner. They still do not have that. They signed Josh Palmer to kind of be that, but it is a lot of slot receivers. I mean, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, all of those guys are slot receivers. And now you can set up the offense creatively to, not necessarily the true X receiver is, I don't want to say completely gone in the NFL. It's not dead, but it is not a necessity the way, if this were 2002 and we're creating
X receiver, you're talking like Nico Collins.
Yes, where every team in the NFL is looking for that type of wide receiver. So not obviously, Josh Allen wins the MVP and that offense is great last year, but it still is a receiving core that's set up to where you have a third and long, you can be in trouble. And that's why they traded for Amari Cooper. Obviously, Amari Cooper was pretty much cooked, and that's why he's still on the open market.
And that's why it's a damn good thing they've got a good offensive line, the best fourth down threat in the NFL with Josh Allen.
That's
because
why
you're in four down territory a lot.
And that's why he won the MVP. The other interesting one, you brought up Quinn Johnson, the fact that, and I love that you brought up the fact that Justin Herbert keeps throwing to him. And it does blow my mind a little because most quarterbacks, I obviously as a Packers fan, but just the past 15 years watching Aaron Rodgers, know that when a receiver is making dumb, boneheaded drops, the plays that Quinn Johnson has been unfortunately known for the course of his career, Aaron Rodgers would just have stopped throwing him the football. Yeah. You basically couldn't have played him because Rodgers would just not have looked his way. Justin Herbert, almost to a fault, will be peppering this guy with targets. He'll drop a pass, next play, throw him another one. Well, he drops another pass. It is actually credit to Justin Herbert that he keeps trying to give him some confidence. But Quinn Johnson, the nice thing is you saw some improvements from him from year one to year two. Obviously, still such a long way to go in terms of reliability. If there's anyone from this tier that you see going and exceeding expectations, who would you think it is?
Well, it's not going to be the Seahawks. I think that
they were borderline F tier for me. I will say.
I think that the Steelers could be interesting, but it's not my answer. Quentin Johnson, if he catches the ball, the Chargers could go, but that's a big if. I would say the Bills. If Dalton Kincaid can return to form, because they've got the true volume threat in Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman's the physical mismatch, and you've got a tight end, and obviously you've got the running back as well with James Cook. They've got all flavors of offense there. And if they can get Dalton Kincaid to be the guy that you talked about as he was scouted, my goodness.
I will throw the Chargers up there. I think Ladd McConkey's amazing. He's a number one type of wide
He
receiver,
really is.
featured guy. He was top 5 in yards per run last year as a rookie. I think Quinn Johnson was always a project. If you could just see another step from him, he's just so physically gifted in what he can do. But then I also think Trey Harris is a guy who is NFL ready as a second rounder. And then Keandre Lambert-Smith is immediately your field stretcher. I think they have talent in there to get to the C tier, even if it's not necessarily, I don't see them going B, A tier anytime soon, but I think they can be a quality receiving core at the end of the day.